Now we've looked at continuous integration and version control, there's some concepts I wanted to clarify, because we've introduced a lot of new terminology and a lot of new ideas, and as we pile these things on top of each other, it might be confusing. So I just want to clarify one or two things. I'm getting questions about it, and the question that I've got up on the screen there is, I'm not picking on the particular person who asked it, because there's a number of questions I've had like this, and probably more people who are not even asking this question. But it kind of shows there's some confusion about the role that different things play. So the question says, should I not be adding to my own repository and then pushing merging to the master repository? Until now I've been editing what is already on master. So this suggests that we've got something here which is a repository called master, and then we've somehow got this other like own repository, somebody's personal repository, and that we, what did it say? What was the question? It said pushing merging. So should we be pushing that into there, or possibly even merging that into there? So I think there's some confusion here about, okay, what is a repository, what is master, what is a push versus what is a merge. So let's try and clear that up. So what I'll basically do is I'll just go through quickly, hopefully, all of the concepts that we've worked with here, and explain the terms as I go. So let's start off with this this kind of master repository. So I think what the person's asking is, you've got the group, let's call them group X, and they've got this place where they are keeping their essays, etc. So we've got these kind of files here, and I think he's asking, well, we've been editing these things here, I've been editing these things directly, but is that the wrong thing to do? Should I not be editing them? Should I be somehow editing something else and merging that in? So I think that's what he's asking, but the terminology is not quite right here. So what we have is group X has a repository. This is the repository that's in GitHub called group X 2012 repos, something like that. So let's draw that as a database, and that is their repository. They have one repository, that is it. So is that master? No, that's not master. What master is, so every repository has a set of branches which are effectively kind of copies of the working folder. So if we think about this as the set of files that you're working on, you've got perhaps your essay and your multiple choice questions and your Gantt chart. So you might have multiple copies of these in your repository. Ignore history for the purposes of this explanation. Ignore history. Let's say at any one time we have multiple copies of these. We have, which are called branches, and you can unfortunately I've never seen a really good explanation or an analogy for what a branch is, but you could think of it as a sort of set of folders which are copies of each other. So you might have student 1 might have a copy of them, student 2, student 3 might have copies, but the one that is the final one that everyone is sharing with is called master. So and this is as far as the repository is concerned. So what happens when a student does a clone? So if over here, let's change color for students. Let's have students in orange. Okay, here's our student. So when they do a clone of the repository, what do they get? This is student 1. Do they get this thing here? Nope, that's not right. What they get is the whole thing. When you clone a repository, you are cloning this thing here, which contains all of this stuff. So they clone that over here. They get that there. Inside of this is all of those branches, as we said before, S1 through to S3, plus master. So if you remember the lecture I did on Git, we had this idea of a working copy, and I think that might be what's confusing some people. We've got this idea of a working copy, which is just a set of files on this user's machine. Oops, I've run out of space at the bottom. There we go. So we've got a set of files there, and what this set of files kind of is they're looking at a particular branch. So they've told Git, right, I'm currently working on the S1 branch. So then it says, okay, fine, here's your files. Here's the files that are in the state of the S1 branch, if you think of that as a folder, which kind of change into the folder. Then S1, the student might edit some of these files, and then they might commit them back to the repository. And what they're doing then is they're pushing that back to this branch. They're updating that particular branch. We've not touched master, we've not touched any of these other branches, we've not even touched GitHub yet. We've just checked back these changes to this branch. And then what we could do is, if we did a push, what would happen is we're pushing this whole repository back over there. And as far as anyone else is concerned, the only thing that's changed now is this branch, because those are the only changes that this user has made. Right? So we can say that this student is working in his own branch. He's making these changes, he's updating his local copies, he's committing these changes to his branch, he's pushing the repository, and in fact he's pushing the whole repository, probably, but the only thing that he's changed is his branch, so master is unaffected, and if anyone else is looking at master, they won't see his changes. So what do we do to get our changes into master? Well, that is where the merge comes in. So our friend S1 here has, let's make S2 here just so that we've got a bit more space. Different color perhaps. It can be nice purpley pink. Move that across there. Okay, so here we have S2. She does her clone of the repository. So she gets this with all four rather, branches. Let's say she's S3. She makes changes to her local copy and she commits them back to her branch. So she wants these changes to appear in master. So what she does then is she just does a git merge from S3 into master in her own copy of the repository. Assuming all goes well, S3 now contains her changes. Now when she does a push back there, master now has been updated. S3 is probably been updated as well because she's made that change locally, but now she's made a change to master. So this is the kind of workflow if you're doing branching. You are creating a branch which is a copy of master, you're making some changes to that branch. Nobody else is affected because when you push this back to GitHub, it's only your branch that's changed. As soon as you want anyone else to see those changes, what you have to do is to merge those changes in your own personal clone of the repository into master. You check that master's good by running your tests and whatever. You're happy with it, you push the whole repository back, and then master is changed. This kind of dance here about this merging is effectively what a pull request is doing for you. If you do a pull request on GitHub, the web application, what it does, so it's probably worth explaining this last part, is let's say we've got two branches. We've got master and we've got B1. And B1 is where I'm making the changes. So I'm doing this locally on my machine. I'm making some changes to B1, happy, all that's fine. And now I want to merge those changes back into master. So this is where you'll see, this is where you need to be careful. And this is what one of the videos referred to as the check-in dance. So master, that we've kind of not touched for a while, is probably being changed by somebody else in the meantime. So that has now moved on. So there have been changes over here that have occurred since we created our copy. So now what we want to do is we want to create a new branch, or not really a new branch, but a branch that contains the changes that we've made with the changes that they've made. and this is what they call a check-in dance. So what we would do is we want to make sure that we've got the latest changes from master. So we do a git pull. Oops, git pull to pull those changes in, which would be the equivalent of a git fetch, but let's not go into that. So now master's up to date, B1's up to date because that's ours. Right, so now what we do is we merge master into our branch. So rather than doing it the other way around, rather than taking our changes and forcing them on master, what we'll do is we will take master and we'll merge it into our branch, just to check that the changes that they've made are compatible with ours. If there are merge conflicts, then we sort them out in the way that we've been doing in the labs. But now what we should have is B1 is our changes plus master's changes. So now this is the best branch now, because it contains everyone else's changes and our changes. We've resolved conflicts. So this is the branch that the team should now be going forward with. So then we flip over, we do a git branch master. Oh, sorry, no we don't. We do a git checkout master. So now our working copy is this one. Then we do a git merge B1. So then this will take all these changes here and push them into master. And our master is identical to what B1 was before. Happy days. So now master is brilliant. So it's everyone else's changes, it's our changes, it's in the right branch. We do a git push to push this back into the repository, into GitHub. Now we've got these two branches here, master and B1. We could delete B1 if we wanted to, because now master contains everyone else's changes, and that's what we want. So if we go back to our question that we're asked, oops. So should I not be adding to my own repository? I think the answer is well, no. You don't have your own repository. You have a clone of the repository. So should you be adding to the clone of your repository? Well, that's the only place you can add to the clone of your repository. So I think the question you're asking is, should I be adding to a branch in my clone of the repository? The answer is yes, you should be adding to a branch, if that's the decision that your group have made, that you're doing it by branching. So yes, you should be cloning the repository, creating a branch, making the changes into the branch, so the next part, and then pushing merging into the master repository. Right, so I think what you mean there is, and then merging my changes into the master branch. Not the master repository. No such thing as the master repository. So I think the answer to your question is you should be cloning the repository, making changes in a branch that you create, merging those changes into master branch on your own local, making sure that you've updated using a git pull to get the latest of everyone else's changes. Once you've merged your changes into master, then you can push that back to GitHub, and then master will now be up to date for everybody else. I hope that answers the question.